Do you know what a person tastes like if you eat them? I hope not, but the heroes of this video do. The cultists believed that raw brains and soups made from penises would give them supernatural power. At the same time, the trio of cannibal cooks were eating women to, imagine this, cleanse the earth. When there was too much meat, they made various dishes out of it and then sold them to the local residents. How about, for example, pies made from people? And although these cases mostly happened abroad, Ukraine also has its own stories related to cannibalism. What can I say, dear ones? Make yourselves comfortable and maybe even tastier. One way or another, it's terrifying.
They don't think they've done anything wrong, so they openly admit their guilt.
That's the comment provided by the Papua New Guinea police after detaining 29 people who were accused of killing and eating at least 7 people. So, the Cannibal Sect, which even included a 13-year-old boy, ate the brains of their victims raw, and from other organs like livers, hearts, and penises, they made soups. A sort of penis soup. These meals were supposedly meant to give the cannibals supernatural abilities. To gain them, the cannibals would choose local healers and sorcerers as their victims. Sorry for the pun, but I think a sorcerer's penis really does have more properties than an ordinary non-sorcerer's one. So, according to the cultists, their flesh contained magic that was supposed to be transferred to the person who actually ate them. These detained individuals turned out to be part of an even larger cult operating in Ukraine. According to government estimates, this cult has over 1,000 members. And besides the desire to gain supernatural powers, the cult members also had another motivation for committing crimes. You see, this was their way of fighting against the high prices that the sorcerers set for their services. It seems like all this is happening somewhere in another universe. But no, this is our planet Earth, dear ones. These events took place not so long ago, in 2012. And even then, in order to drive an evil spirit out of a house, local residents had to pay a mage about $500. It's too much. At 50 hryvnias, I might have considered it, but not at the 2012 exchange rate. Plus, you had to give the sorcerer a whole pig and homemade moonshine for the service. At the same time, some sorcerers performed rituals that required them to have sex with their clients. Just imagine, if a man ordered the service, then the intimacy had to happen between the sorcerer and the client's wife or daughter. Sorcerers were known for being womanizers. Sexual acts with the mage required additional payment. All these factors greatly outraged one of the local deputies. And at the same time, the leader of a cult, who eventually called on his followers to hunt sorcerers and eat their flesh.
Our traditional ethics and morals are against a sorcerer having sexual relations with a man's wife or daughter. This eventually became the main reason for our disillusionment, which led to the formation of the witch-hunting group.
It is known that 4 men and 3 women became victims of the cult. The cultists lured them to a remote area in the jungle where they killed and ate them. After the cannibals were detained, the local police announced that they would conduct new raids to arrest other members of the cult, since it was clearly not the entire cult. But despite what seems to be such a shocking piece of news, because to me it really is shocking, a story that made international headlines and even appeared in our own media, very little is known about the fate of the members of this cult. The police said that the participants were detained and they faced the death penalty. The country's legislation even has a separate article for this, for murder related to witchcraft, not for cannibalism. In Papua New Guinea, belief in magical practices is very common. Nevertheless, the last execution in the country took place back in 1954, and as of 2022, it was completely replaced by life imprisonment. And dear ones, let's move on. So, just imagine, a deadly trio of lovers from Brazil planned to cleanse the world and protect the earth from overpopulation. To do this, they lured women into their home, where they brutally killed them and then consumed their flesh and blood as food. In addition, the killers also had a sort of business based on all of this. They stuffed pies with the meat of their victims and sold them to local residents. And once, it was just insane. They actually gave the daughter of a woman they had killed a taste of flesh, well, her own mother's. That's what kind of purifiers they were. Core Boltrauen Negromonte da Silveira was born on December 14, 1961, in the city of Orlinda, located in the Brazilian state of Pernambuco. Even as a teenager, Core took a person's life for the first time. His victim was a 17-year-old boy. But at that time, due to his young age and lack of evidence, the killer managed to avoid punishment for this crime. Such impunity encouraged Core to commit further crimes. Soon he deceived his own mother for a considerable sum and used that money to buy his own house. Later, Core's brother accused him of trying to kill their mother and hide her body, supposedly to keep receiving the woman's pension. It's hard to say whether these accusations were true, but the further story of Core and his life suggests that he was capable of all the most terrible crimes one could imagine. So in the 1980s at the Momans church, Core met a girl his age named Isabel Cristina Torreão Pires. The girl came from a very poor family. She spent most of her childhood at home, sacrificing her education to do household chores. Although Isabel rarely attended school, she often went to church. So when she met Corky there one day, she quickly fell in love with him. The feeling was mutual. By 1984, the couple got married. During the wedding, the groom had a strange fit of aggression. He started attacking the guests with a knife in his hands and threatening to kill them. But such alarming behavior did not scare Isabelle. The couple continued to build their future together. She didn't even write a post in Tresac or on Twitter. And attacking guests with a knife at your own wedding is definitely a red flag. The couple's life in the next few years seemed to be normal. Seemed to be. At least, there are no documented crimes committed by this couple during that period of their lives. However, the couple's life changed drastically after Bruna Cristina Olideira appeared in their lives. That girl was only 16 years old when she came to the gym where Corke worked as a trainer. Soon after, Bruna became his lover. Isabel quickly found out about her husband's new affair, but this news didn't really upset her. She even agreed to let Bruna join their family, so to speak. That's how a deadly love triangle was formed, which would later become infamous throughout Brazil as the Cannibals of Garanhuns. Shortly after Bruna appeared in the couple's life, Jorge, together with her and his wife, created a sect called Cartel, which was supposed to cleanse the world and protect the earth from overpopulation. The path to this goal was for the members of the cartel to consume human flesh and kill at least 4 victims, each of whom was to symbolize one of the elements air, earth, water, and fire. Jorge, who was the leader of this small sect, convinced Bruna and Isabel that he was receiving direct orders from Cherubim and promised the women that after carrying out all 4 murders, a portal to paradise would open for all of them and they would move on to a new level of existence. Much better. On May 2, 2008, the cartel decided to begin carrying out its bloody plans. That day, they invited 17-year-old Jessica Camila da Silva to their house, promising her a job as a nanny. Jessica was a homeless single mother raising her 1-year-old daughter. Since Jessica had no one to leave her child with during the interview at Jorge's house, she had to bring her daughter with her. As soon as the girl and her daughter entered the house, the young mother was immediately struck on the head and dragged into the bathroom. There, 3 criminals cut Jessica's jugular vein and then spent another 2 hours draining blood from her body. After that, the killers skinned the girl's body, dismembered it, and put it in the refrigerator. The next day, the criminals made pies from the victim's body, which they ate themselves, gave to their neighbors, and sold to local beauty salons, as well as to schools and even hospitals. Moreover, they even fed these pies to Jessica's 1-year-old daughter. Yes, this is complete trash. The leftovers that couldn't be cooked or eaten, the sect members buried in the backyard of their own house. Jessica's child was spared by the 3 killers, fortunately. Unfortunately, they decided to raise her as their own daughter. Sometime after the crime, all 4 of them moved to the municipality of Garanhuns and, let's say, kept a low profile for a while. However, at the beginning of 2012, Jorge and his accomplices came to the conclusion that it was the right time to carry out the next ritual murder. In February of the same year, they killed 31-year-old Gisela Helena da Silva. The cult members also offered her a job as a nanny. And when the woman came for the interview, the killers slit her throat and dragged her body to the bathroom, where they skinned and dismembered her. All the same, For the next 3 days, Kore and his accomplices ate the woman's body and cooked various dishes from it. Some of these dishes, just like last time, they sold to the local residents. Later, the killers buried Gisella's remains in the backyard of their new house. A few days after this murder, on March 15, the cartel lured and killed 20-year-old Alexandra da Silva Falcao in a similar way. Dishes made from her remains were also sold to local residents, and other body parts were buried in the yard next to the previous victim. At that point, Gisella's relatives, realizing that she had not been in contact for a long time, went to the police to report her disappearance. Law enforcement officers began searching and soon learned that someone had used Gisella's credit card in several local stores. Fortunately, those stores were equipped with video cameras, and the recording showed 2 women and a man paying for their purchases with the missing woman's credit card. Investigators were quickly able to identify the people captured by the cameras. Law enforcement then obtained a search warrant for Jorge and his accomplice's house, and that's precisely what occurred. During the investigation, Bruna initially tried to pretend to be Jessica, the first victim of the cultists. However, the police quickly exposed the woman after finding Bruna's diary in the couple's house. On almost every page, she confessed her love for Jorge.
He admits that his teachings are very difficult, but they taught me to be the woman I am now. I needed the experience I gained with him. I am grateful to my teacher, who is always teaching me. I am extremely happy. You are my gift. You are my whole life. With you, I feel like a completely fulfilled woman.
In addition to the recordings, the police also found a 5-year-old girl. This was Jessica's daughter. Despite her young age, she described in detail how Jorge, whom she had always considered her father, killed 2 women right in front of her. But in the end, all 3 killers confessed to their crimes themselves. They even showed law enforcement the places where they buried what was left of their victims. In addition, during a search of Jorge's house, law enforcement also discovered a 50-page manuscript written by the man titled Revelations of a Schizophrenic. In it, Mr. Jorge detailed the events of his early life and described the hallucinations that haunted him during that period. The man wrote that he began to show symptoms of schizophrenia from early childhood. At that time, he was friends with 2 children and often played with them after school in the backyard of his house. So one day, Kore had a quarrel with the boys and told his father that his friends were bothering him and asked him to chase them out of the yard. But when his father went out into the yard, he told his son that he didn't see anyone there. That's how Kore realized for the first time that these 2 friends had existed only in his imagination all this time. After that, the man began to be tormented by various visions. For example, for a long time he was haunted by hallucinations of funeral processions, which he watched from the window of his house. And also ghostly women who didn't walk but floated in the air next to headless men.
I often wondered if my mind was healthy. Standing in front of the mirror, I asked myself about it, and my reflection replied that a normal person wouldn't talk to their own reflection.
According to Jorge's manuscript, shortly after marrying Isabel, he even ended up in a psychiatric hospital, but he stayed there for only 27 days. Besides just the text, the schizophrenic's revelations included Jorge's drawings with truly creepy images, among which were a dismembered woman in a bathtub and an orgy where a group of naked men kills naked women. A few days after the crimes of Jorge Bruna and Isabel became known to the public, outraged townspeople rioted at the House of Horrors and tried to burn down the place where the trio had killed 2 of their 3 victims. This interfered with the investigation a bit, but most of the evidence was still saved from the fire. Among them was the birth certificate of the child the criminals were raising, whose mother they had killed. This confirmed the story of all the people involved in the case. Well, that the girl found in the Cannibals' house was indeed the daughter of Jessica, the cultist's first victim. When questioned by law enforcement, Jorge was asked how her murder was connected to the land cleansing, which was the cartel's main goal. The man replied that the woman had a rebellious nature. She, attention, dressed provocatively and therefore had to die. As for the other victims, in the murderer's opinion, they were impure, spreading discord on the land and therefore needed to be eliminated. When the man was asked why he ate his victims, he replied that cherubim ordered him to do so. Supposedly, only with this language could Corey and his accomplices enter paradise. Also, in an attempt to justify his crimes, the man referred to a fabricated quote from the Bible.
Do not kill, but if you eat this, then you may kill.
Well, that's what he claimed was from the Bible. But when, during the interrogation, the murderers revealed that they not only ate the flesh of their victims, so to speak, but also sold it and even simply gave away dishes prepared from it in the city, this caused a real shock among the residents of Olinda and Garanhuns. At the same time, the police had to find out whether these statements were true. To do this, they interviewed local residents. In turn, they said that Isabel, Jorge's wife, really often sold homemade dishes with meat. She brought them to local hospitals, beauty salons, and sometimes just gave them away to neighbors and people on the street. Several people who bought such dishes agreed to comment on this situation.
She claimed that she was selling them because she needed medicine for her sick son. The pie was fresh and hot since she lived not far from my salon. People were constantly buying them. Sometimes she could sell up to 10 pies at a time. One time, our client bought some dishes from her for us as a snack because we were all very hungry. The woman claimed that she made the pie with chicken meat, and it really did taste very similar, but it was too salty. It will take a long time to forget this. Before, everyone thought such things only happened on television. People are now scared to buy from local vendors, causing their businesses to suffer greatly.
The trial of Corky, Bruna, and Isabel began almost 2 years after their arrest. On November 14, 2014, the jury found all three guilty of the murder of Jessica Camila da Silva. At that time, Corky was sentenced to 21 years and 6 months in prison, while his accomplices each received 19 years. In December 2018, another trial was held for them, which considered the cases of the murders of Yezeli Helena da Silva and Alexandra da Silva Falcao. In both of these cases, the accused were also found guilty, and Corky and Jezebel were sentenced to 71 years in prison, while Bruno received 68 years. Already in 2019, the Court of First Instance increased the killer's initial sentence, as a result of which Corky received another 6 years for the murder of the first victim, and Bruni and Isabel each received 5 more years. After all three ended up behind bars, journalist João Alberto Martins Sabral visited Corky in prison. During their conversation, the killer made a statement that, to say the least, surprised the people following this case.
Now I am a strict vegetarian. I only eat eggs, milk, and vegetables, and in prison only rice and beans. I can no longer eat meat.
But dear, cases of cannibalism happen not only abroad but also here at home. At least they are not as high profile, and there is very little information about them. But for example, in 2013, law enforcement officers in Odessa region discovered a cannibal who ate parts of his victim's body. In March 2013, a 26-year-old resident of Terebunary district in Odessa region contacted the police asking them to find her mother, who had stopped communicating with her. According to the woman, she last saw the missing person on February 14th. At that time, her mother was celebrating Valentine's Day at the house of a fellow villager. When the investigative team arrived at the location indicated by the daughter, they found a grave in which the dismembered body of the missing person was buried. The owner of the house didn't even try to deny his guilt. He immediately confessed to killing the woman. And he told about the events that preceded the crime. According to the man, that day he was drinking alcohol with the woman who was killed. At some point, the owner of the house suspected that his drinking companion had stolen money from him. This, in turn, led to a conflict, as a result of which the man struck his friend several times on the head, causing her death. When the perpetrator realized that the woman was not breathing, he carried her out into the yard, not to try to revive her, but to dismember her. The situation sounded quite creepy, and it really is. It is creepy. However, in reality, our law enforcement officers encounter similar stories quite often. In other words, a murder committed during a drinking session didn't really surprise them, not even the dismemberment of the body. After all, this often happens when a criminal wants to hide the body and cover up the traces of their crime. However, the further information that the suspect revealed, now that really shocked the cops. So, according to the man, when he dismembered the victim, he became curious about what she would taste like. For this, he took some fragments of the body, cooked them, and ate them. Law enforcement needed to make sure how credible this testimony was. A criminal case was opened under the article of intentional murder, and an investigation was launched into the man's involvement in the act of cannibalism. Sadly, that's where news about this case ends, and it's impossible to find anything further, even regarding the criminal's verdict, if there is one. However, I still decided to tell you this story because many of us often think that such horrors happen somewhere far away, abroad across the ocean and all that, and it's unlikely that something like this could ever happen to any of us. However, dear ones, as we can see, that's not quite true. And understanding things like this could one day save your life or the life of someone close to you. Or maybe not, but I hope it will. In any case, thank you for watching the video until the very last second. You're the best. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Eat well, but not people. That's all, thank you, and see you in the next video.